Rick, all set?
Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Rick Leaf. I'm chair of the Master Plan Implementation Committee. This open meeting of the Master Plan Implementation Committee is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, signed into law March 29, 2023. This meeting will be conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance by members of the public will be permitted. All members of the Master Plan Implementation Committee are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The act allows the Master Plan Implementation Committee to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream of this meeting may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube via the link listed on the agenda. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment. And with that, I'll take attendance at this point. Julianne Hirsch.
Here.
Amy Pretsky.
Here.
Millie Milton.
Here.
Ashley Davies. Not with us yet. Hopefully we'll be joining. Tracy, like I said, will be joining around 7:30. Fran Baxter.
Here.
Gene Kennedy.
Here.
Gene Cahill.
Here.
Rick Leaf is here. John Campbell.
Here.
Jen Tolman.
Jen is here.
I see Jen. Jen, are you muted?
Oh. Is it working?
Hear you now. We can hear you now. Okay.
Okay.
Can see you. Welcome. From the staff, Lori Connors.
Here.
Anyone else from the staff here tonight, Lori?
No, just me.
Just you. Okay, so moving on to our agenda. First item on the agenda is to get an update from Gene on this walk of the Assabet River and presentation by Oars a couple of weeks ago. So Gene, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. So I will screen share. Hopefully it will work. Let me know if I'm, all right, can you see this?
Not yet.
Okay, let me try. Geez, just when you think you've got it all ready to go. Let me try this. Is that working?
Yep, can see that.
Okay, so I just took material from 5 of the slides. What we had on February 23rd was a presentation by the Organization for the Assabet, Concord, and Sudbury Rivers, SUASCO. And they are the watershed protection organization. They are concerned with wastewater treatment plants, the water quality, the ecological integrity of the river. And so they were invited to come to Northborough to give us a perspective on how our river, how this might interface with our downtown revitalization effort. So we were focused on the downtown and the waterway through the downtown. So what we planned was a walk. We had a very strong probability of rain, and what we defaulted to was a presentation in the library, which lasted for 2 hours. It was one-on-one. It was very information rich. It was a great opportunity to glean just a tremendous amount of information from this very knowledgeable organization. We had 3 people there: the executive director, the incoming executive director, and the person who's the ecological restoration coordinator. And they give us just a ton to think about and show us. So I'm just going to show you a few of the images from that presentation and highlight their emphasis, which was on dam removal. And this is something I knew nothing about, so I learned a lot, and it was very compelling, as you'll see. So along the stretch of the Assabet, which is just one fork of this tripart river that empties into the Merrimack River and the Gulf of Maine, there are 162 different dam structures on the Assabet. Northborough has 16. And of this, within the Northborough downtown district, as shown on this map, there are 6 different dams. 4 of them are in the Cold Harbor Brook between Church Street and Hudson Street. And 2 are on the main stem of the Assabet at Allen Street, and along right under Main Street, you can see the dam next to Aluminum City. So we were going to tour these and look at them and talk. Instead, we just showed pictures, and but it was just as good a program, even though we didn't get out walking. So their emphasis is on looking at ways that we can actually breach dams and make them passable rivers again. And one of our downtown dams is the Allen Street Dam that is rated as a significant hazard because it's 6 feet high and it has a certain catchment volume behind it, which means in the event of a breakdown in the dam, an accident, any kind of emergency situation, it could have really severe effects for potential loss of life and property. We already are slated to remove a dam here in Northborough on the Northborough Reservoir. Really interesting. It's located in Shrewsbury and Boylston, but it's called the Northborough Reservoir, and it used to be a water supply for Northborough. And the case for removing dams, they give us the 3 C's by making the river flow along its natural course again. It restores a clean, connected, and cool river. It actually warms up when you impound it with a dam. And so the case is supported by the ecological benefits, the safety. Dams can present quite a vulnerability for potential accidents. Dam owners are often not known. We don't know who owns certain of the dams in town, and they are supposed to be maintained. They're supposed to be inspected. They're supposed to be paid insurance on. The purpose of these dams was often for things they're not used for anymore, like grist mills. Sometimes they were water supplies, or they can still function for existing purposes. So that's just background on dams, and I will move forward to the next page. Okay, so in 2008, the Army Corps of Engineers, which has jurisdiction over navigable waters, did a study of the Assabet River and looking particularly at dam and sediment removal possibilities. They focused on a number of dams along the main stem of the river, and these are stretched between Stowe and Northborough. Aluminum City and Allen Street are here at the end. And at that time, the price tag for what each of these projects would cost was somewhere around the $1 million mark. And I'm sure you can imagine in today's dollars, it would be much higher. Other highlights we learned were, as shown here, in the event of a 100-year storm, the 1% annual chance of flooding. This is the Allen Street Dam. Right here is Allen. Right here is the bridge. The dam structure is right beyond the bridge. And if we were to have a storm like they had in Leominster last year, we would have pretty severe flooding that would cover Hudson Street. And we're starting to have those more severe storms more frequently. So what was a 100-year storm is becoming a more frequent probability of storm. And actually, one of the fascinating things we learned is that dams actually increase the damage from flooding because of the way that the floodplain can't absorb the flood water as well. That was interesting to me. Okay, so this is what I thought was super inspiring. These are images that the Army Corps of Engineers study generated of the existing dam structures. This is at Allen Street. This is at Aluminum City, looking from the direction of the Main Street Bridge to the south. And if they were to breach this dam and restore the riverfront, it would look like the picture on the right. So you actually gain upland and you channelize the river. So it's occupying much less space, and you kind of rebuild and restore both the riparian buffer and this riffling, non-stagnant, cool running river, with plenty of oxygenation. Another image from that study is the Allen Street Dam shown here. This is our current impoundment, the reservoir. And if we were to breach the dam, you can see this whole new section of upland becomes available, which would make a beautiful walking path through the downtown, connecting our aqueduct bridge resource, the trail system with our revitalized downtown. So I just thought this was super cool and just like we need to bring oars in and talk with them further and hear more about these kind of possibilities, because I think it really would be just a wonderful bridge for our community to make use of that resource and to get better access to the river. Right now, walking along Hudson Street isn't all that comfortable. So to be able to actually walk through a wooded or a restored section would really just be such a boon to the community. So I wrote here at the bottom, Heather Conkerton was the presenter. She's the dam specialist, and Matt Brown is the new executive director, and they would love to come talk with us. They're very eager to work with Northborough. And so that ends my presentation, but I did want to ask both Jen Tolman and Amy Paretsky were at that presentation. And Jen and Amy, if you'd like to add anything that you learned.
Just before we do that, one quick question. So the pictures we're looking at now, the town center is to the left, right?
The town center would be,
Correct.
yes, to the upper left.
Right.
And we're
And that-
looking at Allen Street, and this is the Aqueduct Bridge, and this is the Allen Street Bridge. The dam is right beyond the Allen Street Bridge.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Jen or Amy, did you want to add anything that you learned?
I can speak a little bit. I know with our MVP money, originally, I think, and Lori might know some of this, I think they used the original MVP money to remove that dam, like you said, the one in Shrewsbury. I'm not sure if it has already been removed, but I remember that being on the agenda or the list of what they were thinking of using the money for. The only other thing I know they mentioned was that there are a lot of a lot of grants for dam removal. So I think that's what they said, that if Northborough was interested and we can find out who owns these, I think these both have private owners, didn't they say that?
Yes.
Would be finding out who owns these dams and convincing them to remove them. But if we could do that, then there's a lot of grant money available for doing that. But I think you did a great job, Jean, covering it all.
Compressing 2 hours into 5 minutes.
Yeah, no, you did a great job. Thank you.
Just one question I would have would be in terms of downtown revitalization and the possible redevelopment of the lot with the Harvey property. And we talked a lot about, the benefits of doing that vis-a-vis the river going by. Was there any discussion to talk about what would there be any impact on the size or flow or view of the river going by the Harvey property if that dam was removed? Would there be a benefit as far as making the possible walkways and parks that were proposed in the proposal by the consultants? Would it be even more beneficial if the dam was removed as far as the impact on what the river would look like going by the Harvey property?
The dam, after the points after the dam are where the water kind of riffles more naturally, through a shallow run here in Northborough. It's upstream of the dam that you have the impounded, sedimented, very nutrient rich, kind of algal growing, stagnant and flow preventing condition. So it's really upstream, like of the Aluminum City. Yeah. Looking from Main Street to the south, there you would see more of the restored river, where along the Harvey property, it would look more like it does today, which is an open channel.
So it wouldn't be any wider, or the water wouldn't flow any faster. There wouldn't be any perceptible difference.
No, and a lot of the dams are built on a contour anyway, so there is a slope there. There is a run down. So even though you might miss that beautiful view of the water flowing over a dam, what you'll see instead is kind of a cascading river channel. So it's very pretty there. If you want to see some really inspiring examples of how this works, the town of Plymouth, or city of Plymouth, has restored and taken successive dams out from some of their, I don't know what the name of the river is, but you can just Google Plymouth dam removal and you will see what it looked like before and after, and how well the land gets restored, how really stunningly beautiful it is. And then all of the fish that normally migrate from the sea to freshwater to spawn, their habitats are being restored, as well as just the animals that live up here at the upper part of the Assabet. they are cut off from the ocean, but even the dams we have here, I asked, are these, until we break down the dams further down, does it really make sense to do it upriver? And they said it does because it restores habitat for the species that would normally inhabit our rivers up here. So you just get kind of a more stagnant and pollution or heat tolerant type of populations in these stagnant areas, but you'd restore more of the native fish if we were to take them out up here.
Any other questions, other committee members or comments?
I have a question.
Sure.
Actually, I have a couple questions. So, you know, when you're driving up Hudson Street from downtown and you go by the river and there's all that vegetation in the river, are you saying that which dam, that removing a dam will make the water flow faster and therefore maybe get rid of some of that?
Yeah, so they remove sediment at the same time, and they also, some of that sediment becomes the upland. Once the channel, like the level of the water drops, because you're no longer artificially increasing it with the dam. So the water level in the bed, you know, will drop significantly, and then what is now sediment becomes upland. But they will also remove sediment that's been caught by the dam, and that sediment tends to be, especially, you know, with wastewater treatment plants that line these rivers, there's a lot of phosphorus loading that we've been cutting down on, but we still have so much phosphorus getting recycled back into the water that it's causing the overgrowth that you see in that reservoir at Allen Street, especially in the summertime. It gets very overgrown.
And if we decided to remove a dam, it's not going to flood the neighborhood. It's what you're saying.
Actually, like this area we're looking at now would be much more resilient to flooding, which kind of doesn't make any sense because I think of the damming as somehow holding back the water and therefore holding, you know, a reservoir in the case of flooding. But it does, the floodplain will absorb more water than the current impoundment structure would absorb, as we saw in those flood maps. That degree of flooding would be less in the 100-year storm, 500-year storm scenarios.
And one more question. Who would normally take the lead on this? Conservation Commission or?
I think we would have to ask who they've worked with in different towns, who the leader of these projects is. I know there are tons of approvals that are needed, federal, state, and local. So Concom is one of the approvals, of course. But we need Army Corps of Engineers and many state agencies, MEPA, involved, as has happened with the Northborough Reservoir Dam that they're now in the process of either taking down or soon to, as Amy said.
Lauren?
Oftentimes the proponent of a dam removal is the DPW because they're charged with maintenance of dams as well as culverts. In the case of Northborough, most of the dams are privately owned, but still, I know that the DPW director has been very much involved with removal of the Northborough Reservoir Dam. But it could also be the Conservation Commission, it could be the Planning Department, so it could be a joint effort of these three departments. So there are many partners.
So would our committee want to do have a direct presentation from ORS, or do you think there's another way that we invite them to our town, you know, through another town committee or with town staff? They're very eager to come back and work with us on river
Jean,
issues.
I just want to make a quick comment. I thought it was counterintuitive, honestly, to knock down a dam and let the water go. So I think if they were to make a presentation to our group, I think to answer Rick's question, I would want them to focus sort of on that side of the Assabet River, because it did seem strange to me, and I really would rather dig in a little more on how once the dam goes and the water kind of swells, with the storms and back down again, and, the 4 inches an hour storm versus, what we're used to, and how that impacts this, as you were saying, what the sediment leaves and becomes like a wetland almost, and the buffer things. I would like to see a little more detail on that. So just because I don't have as much, background knowledge like as you do. So I'm speaking for other people on the committee. They might want to see a little more detail on that particular area. It would be my only suggestion, but I thought it was a great presentation overall.
Yeah, the hydrology is a huge part of what goes into the feasibility studies and the planning for this. And the Army Corps and MEPA are very concerned, for all of those reasons. Ashley, you have your hand up. Can you unmute?
Yeah, sorry, I came late and I really wanted to hear this presentation and to go to the walk, but I wasn't able to. I fund this work all over New England through my job as one of the strategy areas I fund. And I mean, one of the main reasons that people do remove dams is to mitigate potential flooding. So that's one of the reasons that you would do it. But also in terms of the Assabet River and the Sudbury Assabet Concord, I mean, there's so much of this river that's nationally recognized as federally important for being wild and scenic. And this is one portion where it's significantly impacted by development, including dams and development right up to it. So this area, really naturalizing this area of the river, I think is really key. I think it would make a big difference in revitalizing our downtown and just promoting the health of the river generally.
I guess my question would be, are we the right committee to advance this another step in the town? My interest in this initially was because the river runs through the center of town, and there was talk in our prior committee meetings about making the river, a resource for the community, with walkways around it and views of it and things like that. I was interested in knowing to what extent would the river become more scenic and beautiful or more of an attraction in the community if we did this kind of work. And I guess I'm sensing there's some of that, but there's also, it seems to me, and I agree with Jen, it seems a little bit counterintuitive. You remove dams and you get better flood protection. But if that's the case, it would seem to me, especially after what happened in Leominster, that the major emphasis of doing this would be for public safety. And maybe that gets driven through the DPW or the Conservation Commission or something. So it's not clear to me how important it is to remove these dams. It seems to me it's probably more important from a public safety standpoint if what Ors is saying is correct. And the emphasis would be to probably get something in the long-term financial plan that would plan that at some point in the future there'd be some way, either through grant funding or articles at town meeting, to raise the money to do the work to do this. So I guess there are still some questions about everybody feeling comfortable that removing the dams really is a way to increase public safety. But given the fact everybody's comfortable with that, it would almost seem like it would fall to the DPW or the Conservation Commission to move this forward with the town, rather than us saying we really ought to do this because it's going to make the river a phenomenal resident, beautiful attraction for residents kind of thing, that we could build walkways along it and put canoes in it. And, that, I think that falls kind of under our purview. The only thing I was thinking about, have to go look at the master plan. I don't recall the master plan itself recommending to the town that these dams be removed. I don't think the master plan got into that. If it did, certainly then from our perspective, we could highlight that area and bring it up before the select board as something to be done, but I don't think that was contained in the master plan. So I'm just wondering if we are going to bring back Ors, whether it ought to be in front of the Conservation Commission or someone else, and then any of us that are interested in that could participate, but I don't see it being as much of a focus of our committee. I think the discussion that was had was important, and I think it needs to be continued to be discussed in town. I'm just not sure if we're leading that charge or not. I don't know.
They
What
did
other people
ask,
think about
or
that?
asked as part of our master plan, had we done an ecological resource assessment? And I said, I don't think we had. So I think it is part of master planning in other places. It just wasn't in Northborough's, within our framing of the master plan.
I think peripherally, we talked about, protecting landscapes and waterways, but I think that's as far as we got into it. And I'd have to look back at the language exactly to see what it said, but I think, Rick, you're right. I think it would be more us encouraging Concom or a town department, DPW, to look into it, and we sort of write a letter of support.
Yeah. Would you agree with that, Lauren?
I mean, I think it would be a challenge for a volunteer committee to take on. It's a big project. So I think it would be much easier to be handled by the staff.
The question is, with everything that's on the staff's plate, I mean, how does this at least get some exposure in the short term and a decision made as to how and when it would get sort of worked into the town's plan to take another step forward with it and eventually decide where the funding would come from if the town feels it's important enough to do. Like I said, it comes back to me. Is it serious enough right now that there's enough of a public safety issue that's building here that over the next planning period, X years, the town feels strongly enough that they want to go ahead and have these dams removed. And then it would seem to be a side benefit would be, some of the more esoteric parts of it, the view of it and the beauty of it and the restoration of upland and habitat and all of that kind of stuff is all important. But it would seem the driving factor might be in the short term that there's a public safety issue here that needs to be addressed. I'm not enough of a hydrologist to understand exactly what the potential is for that to happen.
Well, what I can tell you is right now the staff is working with the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission to update our hazardous plan. So our emergency plan. So this is the type of thing that is being discussed currently among the staff. So I am on the committee, so I can certainly highlight it at the next meeting.
So Fran and Ashley both had their hand up. Fran, do you want to ask your question?
Well, thanks, Jean. I just wanted to Rick's point, and I think Ashley just said, the matrix that Laurie sent out for tonight's meeting has the goals that were set during the master plan. And there is a section under the Concom that talks about the evaluating the removal of obsolete dams and such in the conservation one. I didn't look to see if there was also something in DPW, but it does look like it was something that we had implementation leaders and partners in, and Concom and, okay, the acronym is CA, and I'm not exactly sure which one that is. So it does look like we were thinking about it, at least. CA, Conservation Agent.
Thank you, Fran. That's super helpful. And I think what I was going to mention, Rick, is that right now there's a ton of federal and state funding for this work. And it's just unclear how long that's going to last, with potential administration changes coming. So that's just something to think about. There's a lot of energy around this right now, and throughout New England, a lot of organizations and municipalities are working on this. The state of Massachusetts is hugely behind removing dams as much as possible for the health of the waterways, for the health of the ocean, but to prevent flood or to provide flood mitigation. So I think overall it's just really important for a number of reasons. And the fact of the matter is that there's a lot of funding for it right now. So in terms of when and timeliness, I think that's a reason that I would encourage promoting doing it now. And ORS has done this in Berlin. They just recently took out a dam in Berlin. They just did a really big one, or are still working on it. Is it in Concord, I think, or on the Concord River? Talbot, the Talbot Mills. So, they've only just started doing this in the last few years, but they are gaining this experience, and they are our local watershed organization that can take the lead on you know, organizing this, being a leader. So in terms of what the town would have to do would, you know, be some of that permitting and maybe some help with the grant applications, but I think they would be the coordinator on the removal.
I'm wondering, maybe if you wouldn't mind taking an assignment between now and the next meeting, Jean, I wonder if it wouldn't make sense to have Jean draft a memo that would come from our committee. I guess we could talk about after we've seen it exactly who it would go to, basically summarizing, you know, what came out of this OR's presentation, you know, honing in on dam removal, referencing part of the master plan that spoke to that, and saying that as part of our function in terms of moving forward goals in the master plan, that based on the OR's presentation, we feel the town ought to seriously, or not what the words are, but the town ought to actively consider a plan for moving forward with this. And then maybe, you know, Lori, that gets built into other things you're already working on with this. Can't remember the name of the
Hazard mitigation plan.
hazard mitigation plan. This would just sort of go into that approach there. So maybe if Jean, you could come up with kind of a proposed recommendation we would send from our committee and send that into Lori, and so we'll have it sent around before the April meeting and talk about it again and see if we all agree with the wording, and then put that into the hopper.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Okay. Any other comment? Is anybody on the committee here tonight opposed to Jean doing that?
No.
No? Hearing none. Okay, why don't you give that a shot, Jean, and you know, see what we can review next time.
Sounds great.
Okay, thanks for bringing us up to date and all this. It was a nice presentation. Thanks, Jean.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think the next two items on the agenda kind of go together. The status of the town offices feasibility study and the downtown revitalization project, Blake and Pierce Street, sort of go together because when I went to the public meeting that was held on the downtown offices feasibility study, there was some talk about what would happen if, in fact, 4 West Main Street, you know, the old town hall, was the site of this, having to do with the fact that it wasn't big enough. It might have to be expanded into the direction of Blake Street. And so sort of the Blake Street project and the town office feasibility study sort of go together to a certain extent. So I thought it'd be good if Ashley, who's on the committee, could give us an update on where things stand with town offices feasibility and, you know, what the impact on Blake Street may or may not be. And we can talk about Blake Street a little bit and then talk about how we go from there. So Ashley, why don't you sort of let us know where the committee stands on terms of the relocation of the town offices at this point?
So we had initially planned to vote at that public meeting, was it 2 weeks ago? But at the time, we just didn't feel like we had enough information. The real estate assessment wasn't in, and so the committee got in the valuation for resale of all the buildings. That was the missing piece. We got that this morning, and I haven't had a chance to take a look. But one thing that was still missing from that was what a potential cost would be of rebuilding the current town offices in the back of the lot. So there's just some missing information that we're still waiting on. But once we have that, the committee will assess, you know, the valuation of all of the properties, the cost of construction estimates, and then we'll take a vote on the 27th. So that's where things stand right now.
27th of March.
Yes, 27th of March. So next, is that next Wednesday, I think?
Yeah.
Or next Tuesday?
Yeah.
Wednesday. Yeah.
So just to review my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, but the proposed areas that are being looked at right now is this use of 4 West Main Street with probably expanding the footprint of that building either back or towards Blake Street or something, and possibly also relocating some of the town office space. They talked about putting the recreation department and the fire station on Pierce Street as a possible potential of all of that. So that kind of for West Main and the fire station on Pierce Street was kind of one alternative area. Another was the existing spot in the old high school where the town offices are now, but that probably wasn't going to be big enough. And so either that was going to have to be added to or a new building built on that lot, or going out to the White Cliffs property and building a new town offices facility on the White Cliffs property. And I guess at the same time, doing the work to stabilize and use the White Cliffs mansion as some sort of a municipal facility, but not so much to house the town offices, but there'd be kind of a new building constructed on that site. So I think
Well,
those
just a
three-
couple clarifications there, Rick. The old town hall that for West Midlands, it wasn't, I don't think, within the consultant's purview to look at additions to that, to the back, like where we didn't own land. So I'm unclear still as to whether we'll get any information on what it would look like to build back onto property that the town doesn't currently own. They did include looking into expanding to the side to where the town toward Blake Street and where the town has a parking. So I think that'll be part of that. And then where current town offices is, there wasn't a question about whether the size was an issue with the building. I think it was big enough if they redid it, but they would have to rehouse or temporarily rehouse town staff for about 18 months. And the thought was it might even be less costly or make more sense to rebuild a building in the back of that lot just to give a better sort of entrance, more parking, certain things like that. So it wasn't an issue of size as much as some of the other factors that they were considering. So they proposed a rebuild of town offices in the back of that lot as another option. And then, yeah, on White Cliffs, they did consider the use of the interior of White Cliffs upstairs as part of offices, but downstairs would be municipal public use.
Okay. So those are the three basically scenarios under review right now, and one of those will be voted on as the one to be accepted. I spoke at the public meeting, and I spoke in favor of building the town offices at the White Cliffs property for a couple of reasons. First of all, I spoke to the fact that one of the catalyst areas for downtown revitalization is basically that whole Blake Street area, with 4 West Main Street being kind of a gateway building in the front, and then doing some sort of work to make Blake Street more pedestrian friendly and a passageway down to Pierce Street, the possibility of some redevelopment over time on Blake Street itself. And then there were some really good ideas from the consultants about how to use the fire station on Pierce Street and open up the property in the back down to Cold Harbor Brook. And I said, I thought that if anything was going to happen in the downtown area sooner than later, and sooner could be 3 years, 5 years, whatever, that whole Blake Street area had the greatest potential. And so I said, personally, not speaking on behalf of the committee, but personally, I was in favor of relocating the town offices, either doing something where they are now or relocating them on the White Cliffs property. And as a matter of fact, given the fact that there are no good alternatives to the White Cliffs property, putting the town offices down there, restoring that building and making that available for some sort of public use is probably what most people in town would say they'd like to see happen down there anyway. And that's going to be a lot of cost involved with that. But if in fact we don't use 4 West Main and the fire station and the town offers RFPs for redevelopment, revenue will come in on those buildings, and some of that revenue can be used to offset the White Cliffs. And so I said I saw the two going hand in hand, that a redevelopment of 4 West Main and the fire station could provide funding to be used towards development down at the White Cliffs property, and would also leave everything down in that Blake Street area available for some future redevelopment downtown. And so I said personally, that's what I was in favor of. And I guess personally, I continue to be in favor of that. And I'd just like to have a discussion among the committee tonight about what the committee feels about that. And would we want, prior to the 27th of March, to send a memo to the town offices committee, indicating that our committee would prefer that the town offices not be relocated at 4 West Main and the fire station on Pierce Street. But once again, this is just me speaking, but I'll open the floor up to others to see what other people feel about this whole situation. And as a committee, should we go on record about this, or just kind of let the chips fall where they may and then react to that after it happens? So I'll stop talking, but at least that's my opinion, is that we ought to advocate for not using 4 West Main and the fire station for the town offices. Having said that, who would like to talk next?
I will.
Go ahead, Julia.
So I'm tending to agree with you. I'm not committing, because what I would like to know is what the value to a developer would be for 4 West Main. If that building would be difficult to sell, then we have to decide between two difficult buildings to sell. Correct me if I'm wrong, I was at that meeting also, but it seemed like the consulting group was most optimistic about the current town hall being sold and apartments going in there. Did you hear that like I did?
I heard that comment. I don't know if I put optimism on there, but they thought that would be a good reuse for the building.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I mean, I think what you said, Rick, is makes a whole lot of sense, but is the devil in the detail of how much 4 West Main would bring to us?
Now, Ashley, I think you said that something today. You received some information about that?
Yes, I have that in my inbox. I have to review that before the next meeting. I had hoped I would be able to review that before this meeting, but didn't get a chance.
Okay. So it looks like we'll have that information. And that's something that the office's feasibility committee is going to use to make their decision.
Yes, yeah, that will go into the decision making, for sure.
Yeah. Other comments about what position, if any, our committee should take on this prior to the 27th of March?
Well, I'll go next.
Yeah.
I think that I'm also thinking that the White Cliffs is the better place for the town hall for services, because it is within the downtown area, but it's not going to consume the downtown area. Building onto 4 West Main Street in any form or fashion will reduce the availability for parking, businesses, commercial, and entertainment in what we have all along been talking about, the core of our downtown area. So I would not want to see another large municipal service at 4 West Main Street. But to Julianne's point, a lot of it's going to come down to what the disposition of the buildings that we don't keep, and whether that will help offset whatever cost it is to move and relocate staff. But in an ideal world, I would want to see town services on the White Cliffs property. It's a beautiful piece of property. It has a lot of parking. It could be a community, the gazebo, the fields, passive recreation gardens, all of that could be on that massive piece of property. And then it would be able to keep the historical piece as well. But it does come down to some point of money too.
That's what I was gonna say too. I felt like it would be premature for us to write a letter not knowing any of the costs. Although I do think it sounds the best too. I would be nervous about writing a letter just without knowing any of the numbers.
But we're not going to make the decision. We're just going to give an opinion as to how we feel the property could be best used for the benefit of the town. If it turns out that the financial impact of using the White Cliffs is significantly more the town can afford to do, and from a financial standpoint, the best option is to somehow use 4 West Main Street, then so be it. It's not like we're making the decision on behalf of the town. I just think it'd be important for the the town office's feasibility committee to understand, but from our perspective, that Blake Street is a significant potential over time for downtown revitalization that'll be impacted quite severely if 4 West Main and the fire station on Pierce Street both ended up used for town office space. That pretty much is the end of really kind of any redevelopment in that particular part of town. I mean, those are the two buildings that something could happen in, and the prettying up of Blake Street becomes a little bit, less beneficial if it doesn't really act as a passageway between the two buildings and, the potential for some redevelopment of some of the other property on Blake Street comes up for sale over time. So I just think, the feasibility committee should at least keep that in mind. But I don't think what we say is going to have great impact on the decision if the financial impact of one alternative over the other is going to be the deciding factor. But if they balance out fairly equally, I think having the committee understand, the impact on downtown revitalization would be an important thing for them to have in mind. Other comments, John?
Pardon me, my internet went out a few times, so I missed part of your comments and part of Ashley's. But what I'm hearing that makes sense, that the downside to our efforts in downtown revitalization to using 4 West Main seems to be the potential of congesting what we see as an area of.
Oh, we lost you, John.
Rose up, John.
I just wanted to know, I just brought up my email and I can kind of speak to this a bit. They did consider in this property cost report, they did consider the acquisition of 11 Blake to expand. And based on that, it's actually more expensive than the White Cliffs renovation and addition by $5 million.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
That's
So it's pretty shocking. So yeah, it's a big cost there. And renovation of the existing town hall and putting an addition there is also more costly than the White Cliffs renovation and addition
wow.
by 1 million. So that's they're pretty close, as the consultant had noted in the public meeting, actually pretty close. 45 million is the range. It's pretty much all around there. 4 West Main, 50 million. So
Ashley, at the meeting, the consultant said that if you do White Cliffs, there might be historic property grants and things like that. Is that number that they're quoting for White Cliffs including potential money like that?
I don't think so. But let me just, there's not a lot of notes with this. For White Cliffs, it just says renovation and addition. Has a per square foot cost. Hazmat abatement. No, it doesn't talk about sources of funding here, just costs.
And one more question, does the report tell you how much we could possibly sell the current town hall in 4 West Main for?
So I was hoping it would, but it doesn't seem to break it down like that. It's just showing cost, and I'm assuming that they've worked in to their cost assessment the value that they get from the sale, but it's unclear. So I'll have to ask that in the meeting. Okay. It's really just a spreadsheet with costs and scope, and a couple of very few notes. So yeah. So I'll have to report back.
Thanks.
Other comments on my proposal that our committee send a letter before the 27th of March to the committee recommending not using 4 West Main and the fire station on Pierce Street for the town hall. Other comments about just advisability of us sending that memo? Go ahead, Julian.
So I think the letter could be phrased in such a way that, that we don't have the complete information, but from our perspective and the work we've done, moving town hall to White Cliffs would, allow us to develop the 4 West Main Street area and move forward with, the ideas from the consultant and what came out of this committee. We can kind of say, we understand that the numbers are not all in yet, but if the numbers, like you said, align, then, White Cliffs might be the best option.
Yeah, doesn't even have to say White Cliffs, just not from our perspective, at least from my perspective. I don't care whether it's they build a new building where the current town hall offices are now, or they put it at White Cliffs. Just stay away from 4 West Main, Blake Street, and the fire station. I think that would be I wouldn't say it as directly as that, but that'd be the point of the memo, that of the 3 alternatives, the one that we'd assume we'd prefer not to be chosen is the one to use 4 West Main and the fire station.
I will just make a note to the use of the fire station is about 10 million, a little less than 10 million cheaper than all of the rest. But I think, as the consultants noted, it's not really a great place for a town hall, and we might grow out of it quickly. So I just wanted to make sure, because I said they were all pretty similar, but the fire station is, a lot cheaper, but not enough to put a square peg in a round hole, I think.
Yeah, and once again, my concern was when there was talk at the public meeting that to make it work down back in the center of town, it was everything except the recreation department would go into 4 West Main, and the recreation department would go into the fire station. So it was like both buildings were going to be gone, at least at some discussion there. So if the discussion is still that to relocate back to the center of town means putting the recreation department in the fire station and putting everything else in an expanded 4 West Main, like I said, that really takes both buildings off the table, and I think that really puts an end to any kind of redevelopment along Blake Street. So I don't know.
Yeah,
Ashley,
just going with that, Rick, if we were to put the recreation at the existing fire station, I think it brings up the cost of using 4 West Main by like 12 million. So it's well above the rest in terms of cost if we're looking at renovation, expansion, using the fire station for recreation and all of these things. It's a big cost, and then we, like you said, we lose that area for downtown revitalization.
right. All right. Other comments about our committee taking a position. All right, John, you're back. Welcome back.
I think I'm here.
Okay.
I just want to one comment. I would agree with your perspective, Rick. I think the committee's position that 4 West Main and the fire station puts a plug in the other plans we see for that area. So I concur. I didn't hear part of Ashley's presentation, and I haven't followed the town hall committee at all. Tell me about the plan that would involve building on the current town meeting site or complete renovation of the current town hall. Is that number 3? I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, Ashley, you want to
John, yeah, there was discussion from the consultant about the current site, either renovating the existing building and rehousing current town staff for about 18 months or more. And there was a second alternative considered on that site where a new town offices was actually built along the back of the site, just because of the siting would be better and there would be more parking. There was a few reasons they proposed that, but in the valuation spreadsheet we got, that wasn't included, that rebuilding on the current town hall site. So we just, as a committee, we're waiting for more information on that alternative, but it didn't seem like a hugely popular idea. Anyway.
Thank you.
Any other comments about sending a memo to the town offices committee prior to next March
Gene's hand
27th?
is up. Gene Kennedy.
Okay, Gene, go ahead. Yep.
Ashley, did you say that the study indicated that the existing 4 West Main Street building is not large enough to accommodate a town hall for Northborough?
For the most part, the consult. Hold on a second. Can you hear me?
Yes.
For the most part, the consultants said that it was not quite big enough. There would have to be some reworking happening. They could make it work, but it was going to be tight, and more likely it would make sense to look at expanding it to the direction of Blake Street or back by purchasing some additional property behind it.
Okay. I mean, you know, when I worked in planning in Framingham, the Framingham Town Hall was downtown Framingham. And people were coming and going. There were employees, there were visitors. There was activity that was generated by the town hall building that I'm sure had a positive effect on the businesses in downtown. I also, having driven by that building for many, many years, often wondered why it sat as empty as it did for so many years. And I'd hate to be in a position to advocate for a renewal of a building as the foundation for downtown if the building itself or the marketing of the building makes it inappropriate for any type of retail or commercial reuse, when we have an opportunity, at least generally speaking, to have it filled with employees and activity that would contribute to downtown. I clearly would not agree with the idea of not only that building, but also the fire station. Clearly, I'd agree with Rick that taking both of those out of any type of a redevelopment scenario would not be consistent with what we've been working on. But unless we had a strong marketing study that said the reuse of the old town hall is assured, and it will be vital, and it will positively contribute. And this is notwithstanding all of the economic data in the study. I mean, we had quite a bit of that work done, and the number that sticks out in my mind is the downtown can support 42,000 square feet of restaurant space. Well, 42,000 square feet is an acre. So it's pretty unreasonable to me that you're going to have an acre of restaurants in downtown Northborough. So I had a big question mark about all of that economic data. And I'm reacting more on my history of downtown as a resident and not seeing that building viably reused for any real purpose. So that's sort of my caveat. I mean, I would generally support a letter that provides, you know, our consensus, that provides some link to the study that we just completed downtown. But I wouldn't want to be in a position where we advocate for something that takes a long time to happen.
Lori, you want to comment on, you know, what you're hearing and what your impression is about, you know, use of that building going forward if it doesn't become the town offices?
I know this is going to be an unpopular opinion, but I believe that if the town hall were to not go to 4 West Main Street, the most viable reuse options are to have some sort of retail restaurant use on the first and second floor, and to have the balance of the floors used for multifamily. So the benefit of having the multifamily on the upper floors is, of course, you're creating demand for additional business. And there's already an elevator in the building. So that would be a benefit to the multifamily reuse. I think that the building, for the last, I understand the building was built in the early 1980s. And it hasn't been successful for the businesses that have occupied it previously. There was a high turnover. So I expect that that will continue. The Brilla Coffee is closing its doors within the next couple of weeks. So I just don't see it being successful as a commercial building exclusively.
I guess my opinion is we have to have some faith that once we get going down this road and there's some evidence that things are going on in the center of town to improve it from the way it looks and the way it's accessed and how people can park, that the opportunity to develop more of this kind of retail and to a certain extent, some amount of housing will start to develop down there. And so from my perspective, until we get the ball rolling and start to show some progress, it's going to be hard to determine exactly what's going to happen. In the absence of doing anything, we're not going to make any progress. We're going to be talking about later on tonight about some things we can do about street trees and beautification, other things. There are things we can do to start to show that the town is showing some interest in the downtown area and making some improvements. And my sense is that will generate enthusiasm over time. But, I think we just have to sort of get moving down the road as best we can and see what happens. So I understand where you're coming from, Gene. And I don't think that whatever we send to the way I'll word it to the feasibility town officers committee will not, guarantee that in some short term, there's going to be some major redevelopment of the downtown that's just waiting to burst out if in fact they don't put the town offices there. I mean, it won't be phrased like that. It would be more just in terms of if there's going to be any potential at all to do anything down there, that those buildings need to sort of be left available for some development over time. I mean, that's that'll be kind of the flavor of it. If that seems okay to you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we could all have a chance to read the letter and wordsmith it.
Yeah, let's just talk about that, Lori, in the spirit of open meeting stuff. If in fact we want to develop a draft of the letter and then get committee comments, do we actually have to schedule another meeting of the committee between now and the 27th? Or is this something that can be done over email? Or are we going to be violating public meeting laws if we start to craft this memo outside of the bounds or agree to it outside of the bounds of a public meeting?
So, like Rick, you and I could, or even you and Julianne and I could put together a draft, which I then send to the membership, but the membership would only be able to respond to me individually. So there couldn't be a forum that's involved with the discussion. So one thing that I'm kind of unclear of is who would get this letter. Would it be the town hall feasibility committee or would it be the select board?
No, my thing would go to Bill Pierce, the chair of the town office feasibility committee.
Okay.
With copies, I guess, in advance of the meeting to the committee members. They could do whatever they want with it, but just we get our position out on the table as to, as they're deciding what to do, just sort of keep in mind the impact it would have on downtown revitalization. But I would send it to Bill, or have you send it to Bill Pierce, or somebody would send it to Bill Pierce.
Rick, Jen has had her hand up a couple times.
Sorry, I don't see everybody on my screen. Go ahead, Jen. Jen, go ahead.
Hi, yes, sorry. I just wanted to make a couple quick comments. I know that the current town hall, there are specialty builders. I think it was either New Bedford or Fall River where they take that sort of building and turn it into apartments, which I think is a kind of a cool thing. In terms of 4 West Main Street, my only comment is I would rather have, I don't know who would determine this, like dollars per square foot to renovate. Is it better to maximize that as apartments versus, like a shared office, kind of the new way people do office building space versus retail? Because then the tax dollars from each of those different things and what's in there and all that, all those numbers roll up to something. So I would really want to get sort of information, kind of dug in there. And the third thing I would say is I kind of like the idea of the town offices being over at White Cliffs, only because of the new building part of it, seeing how Lincoln Street School has amazing technology as a new elementary school. I think that the town office staff, all those committees and groups, could benefit from new technology, new building, all that. And as a side extra little plug, Mass Cultural Council loves to give grant money for any artist space or something. So if we were to come up with obviously a lot of detail here, but a quick plan that says part of, White Cliffs is going to be put towards the arts, then certainly we could apply for those kind of grants. So just a little thing to kind of keep in mind, even if it does become one of the other buildings, if some of that was to come community art space, blah, 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 there are grants available for that.
Okay, good comments. Thank you, Jim.
I was also wondering if we're gonna write a letter, do we include the White Cliffs aspect? Because that is one of the goals in the master plan, is talking about the reuse of White Cliffs. I don't know. But I also see Jane Kennedy's idea too. I hate to leave 4 West Main Street empty because it's sat there for so long. And the original master plan said, when you build malls and when you build shopping on the outskirts of town, it's going to be hard to keep your downtown thriving. So I do get concerned that we say, let's not use 4 West Main Street, and then it sits empty. But I don't know. It's hard. It's like rolling the dice.
Yeah, it's hard to say exactly what's going to happen. But once again, if we have any opportunity at all to make some impact on the town center with the things we talked about as far as downtown revitalization, I think that's the area that's got the best potential for something to happen. And I also think if independent of how much it would cost, and it's interesting that these different proposals are coming up to about the same, but independent of cost, I would think that if you ask most people in town what they would like to see the White Cliffs property used for, it would be for municipal use. That the building itself could be renovated and stabilized and could be used for town functions and meetings and things like that. And the property itself could be, beautified, and it'd be just something the town could really be proud of, kind of thing. Obviously, the only feasible reuse proposal we got for it was not acceptable to the town. And so I would think that most people would feel that if the town could just own it permanently and use it for the town's benefit, people would agree to that. So in fact, there's an opportunity here, I think, to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, to use that White Cliffs property for a valid municipal use, and finally put all that to bed as far as what's going to happen to that property. And then also, develop the potential to use 4 West Main, the fire station, and Blake Street as a revitalization, as they said in the report, catalyst opportunity.
So then maybe it should be in the letter, because the goal under historical NCH 3-1 is identify short and long-term planning goals for properties such as White Cliffs and 4 West Main Street.
Yeah. Could definitely do that. Could bring that out as part of our, charge as the master plan committee, that this would also, step up to a recommendation in the master plan as far as reuse of the White Cliffs. That could be included.
I have a question.
Right.
So we're talking, and I have to say, Jean, I really appreciate your comments about, well, what will happen to 4 West Main. But isn't it incumbent on this committee to get someone who can really help us work through why 4 West Main didn't succeed? And maybe it's, the traffic pattern, maybe it's parking, I don't know what it could be. And maybe the businesses just weren't, what Northborough was looking for. But isn't it our responsibility to figure out why it didn't succeed and then how to make it succeed? I mean,
Part of the problem with 4 West Main had to do with the owner of the building and his lack of maintaining it and improving its interior. And then there was the parking, right? I mean, the restaurant failed because of its own Board of Health issues. As we know from the study, the floors within the building were not really constructed well. He had scaffolding up for decades because he didn't care to fix it because he knew he had to turn it over to us after a certain period of time. So under the right ownership, I think, and us addressing the parking on Blake Street through the project that Lori had proposed a couple of weeks back, that those things will help. But you're right. We have to start somewhere. I mean, this is the core of what we said we wanted our downtown to be, this area. And with all due respect, downtown Framingham is a lot bigger, so there's a lot more opportunity for businesses to be supported by that massive town hall or city hall down there. I don't think, we just have a different setup, but.
I think that our role in all of this was to move forward, the single most desired thing from the master plan work that was done, which was the residents' interest in improving and revitalizing the downtown. And so we've produced a report. It's not perfect, but it brings some good ideas to the table as to what could be done and what areas of the town had the greatest potential. And it recommended that to make this feasible, that the town needs to add staff support to do it in something like an economic development coordinator or a downtown planner or something. This committee can't spend the rest of its time developing a revitalized downtown. I mean, we've done what our job was, and we can sort of stay around it and watch it, but it's now up to the town of Northborough to put together the staff capability to do exactly what you said, Julianne, to understand what's going on with that building, to find out who good developers are, what could be done with it, somebody that's got experience in knowing how to do this, and take this and now move it forward. So I think one of the most important steps in downtown revitalization is to figure out from a staff standpoint how either the existing staff gets reorganized to make this function a priority, or by the time we get to town meeting next year, having a new staff position that's funded a certain way to hire someone to actually do this. I don't see this committee, doing all this work. There are other things in the master plan that need to be considered. And I think that we've done a good job over the last year of bringing this to be forward to the town, which was our job. And certainly one of the key things that came out of both the master plan itself has a recommendation the town consider hiring an economic development staff capability. And the consultants that we work with said the same thing, and I think we agree with that. And so I think the next step is going to be to see how and when we bring that capability onto our staff. In the meantime, we can do the best we can to keep egging things along, but I think it really comes down to having the capability of a full-time or part-time person who concentrates on this and makes this happen. And the answer is a lot of questions you brought up and a lot of questions, other people have, like the things that Jen brought up. Those are all valid points. But I don't think it's our job as part-time volunteers to somehow feel we're capable in actually making a downtown revitalization happen. Our job was to tell the town it was important, and here's some ideas about how to do it, and go do it. somehow, you know? And, put the town offices someplace else, by the way, in a nice way. At least, once again, I'm speaking for me personally, but I'm not sure if anybody on the committee disagrees with that, but I would foresee over time, ourselves moving away from this and, talking about other things in the master plan. I think we'll finally get to that later on tonight about how we start to move in that direction. Let's get back again to the question on the table. I'm not hearing at this point any opposition to our committee sending a letter to the town office's feasibility committee prior to their next meeting, indicating that we prefer that 4 West Main and the fire station not be used for the town offices. So if we can either take a vote on that, or in lack of any opposition, what I would propose is that I would write a draft of that and send it to Lori and Julianne for their comments. Hopefully we could, I'd write this up tonight, and then Lori and Julianne, you guys could look at it tomorrow, see what you want to change or add to it, and we get that out to the committee over the weekend, see what kind of feedback we get. And if in fact the town office's feasibility committee meeting on the 27th, which is Wednesday next week, I would like to get this out to Bill Pierce and the committee members, hopefully by Monday, no later than Tuesday, so they have a chance to read it over before they meet on Wednesday. So we'd have to move this pretty quickly, I think, just to get it in the right people's hands in the right time frame. So I guess the first question is there any opposition to us taking this action and moving fairly quickly on it over the next couple of days? And hearing none, I think what I'll do, like I said, is when this meeting's over tonight, I'll draft up a draft of this. It won't be particularly long, doesn't have to be particularly long. And I'll try and hit some of the points we talked about tonight. And I'll get it to Lori and Julianne for their review tomorrow morning. And we'll take it from there. Any other comments about any of this before we move on to the next item on the agenda? All right, I think this was a good discussion. I thank everybody for their input on this, and we'll keep moving down the road on this, and we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is Lori, Adopt a Street Tree Program.
All right, before we go forward with that, I just wanted to let you know that Tim, a town administrator, has asked me to not release the RFP on the Blake Street project because, of course, the town hall feasibility study is still doing its work. So I have been very slowly putting together the RFP, and I plan on having that good to go, assuming that the town hall feasibility study will not select Blake Street. If they do decide to select Blake Street for West Main Street, I still think that we can proceed with the project, but it would be of a different scope than originally envisioned. So there'd have to be some modifications to the RFP. So moving on to the Adopt a Street Tree program. So this was a program that the DPW director and I had originally designed about 2 years ago when the Be Well program was getting underway. So we had submitted this grant program for consideration under the Be Well program, and it was not selected. So speaking with Julianne, she had mentioned to me her desire to go forward with a street tree planting program. So I had mentioned the fact that we had designed this program a couple of years ago. I sent her the materials, and she had asked me to update them and bring them forth to tonight's meeting for discussion. So I can certainly share my screen and show you what I have here. So this is a flyer that I updated, which this would be a flyer. So what I was envisioning with this program is that we would secure funding. Of course, right now it's an unfunded program. So when I looked through the costs of street trees today, they've gone up quite a bit over the last couple of years. So what I was envisioning is that there would be 10 different species of street trees. We would concentrate the program on Northborough Center, and we would identify specific specific streets that would be considered to be within Northborough Center. And then we would send flyers to all of the property owners within the specific geographic area. So what my cost would be approximately $25,000. So that would pay for the planting of approximately 70 trees. So those would be planted over a 2-year period of time. So I was envisioning 35 trees the first year, 35 trees the second year. The DPW is unlikely to have the staff capability to plant all of the trees, although they do have the capacity to dig the holes. So we would be counting on volunteer labor to assist the DPW with planting these trees. And the planting could be divided up over the course of the seasons. So we could plant half the trees in the fall, the other half of the trees in the spring. So that would enable 4 planting times over the course of the 2-year period. The budget would include ties and stakes for the trees, as well as mulch and soil. And then, as is explained in this flyer, this would be a voluntary program. So if people were interested in having a tree, so it isn't necessarily just homeowners. So if a renter were interested in having a tree, then they could nominate their property. They would just need the sign off of the property owner, and then the renter and the property owner would mutually agree to care for the tree. It could also be planted in front of commercial properties, so storefronts. In this case, the business owner would be the applicant, and they would have to receive the sign off from the property owner. So I'm going to stop share this one and share my screen again. Let's see. I thought I opened up my application, but maybe I did not. Let me do that. So there would be a, here we go. Oh. I've got so much open. For some reason, it's on my screen, but not showing. Let me try that again. Very odd. Oh, here we go. So this is the application form that I was thinking about sending out. So of course, the location for the street tree would be within 20 feet of the right of way. The DPW director does not want the street trees planted within the right of way, because then that means that they become a town problem. So If they are planted within 23 to 20 feet of the right of way, then they still qualify for as a street tree, but the maintenance would be the responsibility of the property owner. So this little one-page form would provide the names of the various street tree options. And of course, Julianne sent me a link to an article that said the Cleveland Select Pear wouldn't be a great option because of the fact that many communities are qualifying it as an invasive species. So I'm happy to choose an alternative species if anybody wants to specify one. So this form would allow the applicant to select their first choice, their second choice, their third choice. They would provide their contact information. They could even specify where they want the tree to be planted. If they have overhead wires, then the small ornamental trees will be recommended. Certainly, we don't want to have a 60-foot maple tree planted adjacent to overhead wires. So that is why I put in here that the tree warden would approve the location of the tree as well as ultimately the species. So if they have selected all large shade trees and they're under utility lines, then they will be the recommendation will be to choose a small ornamental species. So we are asking for the sign off, and that's pretty much all that's to it. Like I said, that this would be concentrated on Northborough Center, and the tree warden would be heavily involved. The tree warden is the DPW director, Scott Charpentier, who you all know. Like I said, my interest would be splitting this into 2 years just to make it more doable for the town. So it'd be a first come, first served basis. So obviously we have no funding. So we would apply to the select board to see if they'd be interested in funding this with ARPA funds. There is also a grant program through National Grid, but that provides very, very little funding. So if we were to fund this through the grant program, then chances are we would only be able to do maybe 20 trees. Any questions?
Lori?
Yeah.
The garden club in about 2003 planted about 20 street trees in downtown Northborough. And we worked with Bigelow's. We got them for, fairly low cost. I think at that time, Bigelow's would even kind of give the town trees in exchange for using town land or something. I don't believe that's the case anymore, but our experience was that with volunteers watering trees, we didn't get a whole lot of business buy-in, and we were planting into squares that were probably about, I don't know, maybe 3 by 3 or smaller, out of sidewalk locations. The only trees that made it out of those 20 were planted into a large area of soil. So in front of CVS, you'll notice 3, I believe they're calorie pears, are still there from that planting, but everything else failed. And so I would be very cautious about placement and make sure the trees have enough catchment of rainwater, that even if a well-intentioned person thinks that they're going to keep the tree alive and fails to, that tree will not be starved of water.
Yes, that's some really good advice. So I've also been involved with some street tree programs. We tried to plant some trees that we ended up getting from I think it was the Arbor Foundation, and they were only about 2 feet wide. 2 feet tall. and the DPW mowed them all over with their lawnmowers. I nearly cried. So, yeah, there's definitely some words of wisdom that I'd be interested in hearing from you and others if the select board decided to fund this program.
I would also recommend as many native species as possible. I know that not all trees work well alongside streets, but I see Coosa dogwood and wondering why not eastern dogwood and, some other choices here I'm not even familiar with, but as much resilient, species that happen to be native as we could plant would be beneficial.
Yeah, and these prices are actually from Bigelow. So these are the prices if you order 5 or more. So it was pretty amazing to see the escalation in price over the 2 years. I was pretty disappointed. So originally when I had designed this program, I was interested in going with 2 to 2.5 inch caliber trees. But now those trees are in the high 300s to 400s range. So they've increased by about $150 in the last 2 years. So I decided that it would be smarter and more volunteer friendly to go with a smaller caliber tree.
Did Bigelow's provide any input into the viability of these particular ones that we've chosen, or did we just give them what we wanted and they gave us prices, or did they participate in putting trees down here which they thought would be viable long term?
So I did a combination of things. So the town of Franklin has a really good landscape guide for developers. So I referenced that guide in order to select species. And then, of course, these are species that are sold by the Bigelow. And then there's another guide, which I thought I brought with me, but I don't seem to have, that's from, oh, here it is, the Department of Conservation and Recreation. So they have a list on the back of this, and I'd be happy to send that along to you with a number of species that do well in urban and community forest applications. So that's how I came up with this selection.
Other questions or comments for Lori?
I think it's a great idea. I thank you for all your work you put into it, and I hope it works.
Thank you.
Yeah. I agree. These are the kinds of things that, we can do in the short term to start to show we are making some progress in at least beautification efforts around the town center.
Rick, can I ask, would this be an appropriate thing for us to write a letter supporting Lori in this from a master plan implementation?
Certainly do that. Anybody have an objection to the committee sending Lori thanking her for this presentation tonight and indicating support for this program? That would, copy would go to the select board.
Nope.
No,
Good idea.
Okay, I don't think this will need a whole lot of editing, so if everybody's agreeable, I will just draft said letter and send that to Lori for her use in her presentation to the select board.
Jean, did you have a question?
it just seems to me that 70 trees seems like a lot. And I'd almost prefer fewer trees, but larger caliper trees. I mean, 1.5 to 2 inches of size has less of an impact than a larger tree. Secondly, a 20-foot setback seems more like it's property owner's front yard than contributing to the streetscape. So I'd make that less. And
So
thirdly,
this would be within 20 feet of the right of way. So it could be 1 foot from the right of way. So the whole point is that it would not be within the right of way.
right, but it could
So-
also be 20 feet from the right of way.
Well, like I said, the tree warden would approve the location. So some people don't want to have a street tree in front of their bay window, for example.
Mhm.
They'd prefer to have it off to the side of the house, but it's still close to the right of way. You know, it might be, 15 feet back from the street. So that is why.
Negotiable. Yeah.
That was at a request of the DPW director.
And thirdly, I think the tree warden was sort of humoring you on this program. I've been in that position where a planner has an idea and DPW or police or fire, it's like, too much work, I'm not interested. I mean, the idea that he doesn't want to put trees in the public right of way, which is where they belong to beautify the street. And secondly, doesn't have the staff to help you plant a few 1.5-inch trees, suggest it's more a question of priorities, and that's properly handled, between the tree warden and the town administrator and the selectmen as to whether downtown street planting is more important than, cutting Route 135 lawn or whatever it is. But I wouldn't take his lack of interest as the final word. I think if this is a program that's good for downtown, then it has to be advocated for. And Public Works Department has to do their job like every other department has to do their job if that's what the selectman and the town administrator wants them to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I would not exclude the right of way in this program if, understanding from what Gene said, there aren't that many opportunities for good tree planting locations downtown, but if there are some, then they certainly should be developed for trees, and DPW should do their job. That's my opinion.
And I did want to qualify, just specify that this would include the neighborhoods that are off. So it wouldn't be the core of the downtown that we're talking about. It would be, but it would be a greater area than that. So, the little side streets would also qualify. I have done a street tree planting program before, and you don't always get a huge response from people who are interested in planting trees. So I think that if we were just to specify the scope of our downtown revitalization plan area, then we might only be planting 5 trees or something like that. So
Well, what you might want to do is build flexibility into that tree list. If you get fewer requests, you don't need 70, but maybe you provide 35 and those trees are larger. So I'd provide maybe a little more flexibility in that itemized list that you have.
that's a good point.
Lori, I'd really like to advocate very strongly for use of natives. There's a lot of non-native trees on that list, and we're just learning more and more about, what those trees are not helping, and in some cases, can harbor, insects. They're not feeding wildlife, and they could become invasive, like the Callery pear. So it's just preferable to always plant native unless you have a reason not to, such as, a specific site condition that prohibits a native specimen from being planted.
Thank you.
Yeah, good point.
I have a question for Rick. Rick, do you remember when Tower Hill did the whole urban tree planting project?
Yeah,
So, are any of those people still around? I know it was pretty successful.
yeah. That was in response to the Asian longhorn beetle. And basically Tower Hill developed a contract with the city of Worcester. And the city of Worcester basically paid Tower Hill to take over that program and manage that whole street tree planting environment. And for a number of years, Tower Hill had an ongoing contract with the city to maintain those trees. And that's eventually kind of faded away, but as a matter of fact, the staff positions that the city authorized to do that replanting eventually became part of the Tower Hill organization. But it was all a contractual agreement between the city and Tower Hill to do all that work.
So is there anyone at Tower Hill who could advise us on the idea of natives and
Well, I could certainly put Laurie in touch with the director of horticulture at Tower Hill just to review that list and make any recommendations as to anything else he may suggest that could be beneficial or anything he sees on that list that might be an issue.
and that horticultural person, is his last name Richardson or something?
Mark Richardson, yes.
He came from Garden in the Woods, which is all about native plants. So he might be a really good resource, right?
Yeah, he could definitely, I'm sure he had no problem in taking a look at that list.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I would think also, I agree with Jean's comment about, once again, if in fact this is agreed to and funded, that through the town administrator and the Board of Selectmen, that emphasis is placed, on the efforts of the DPW to see this thing through. And if there's some additional capacity that can be given to this program through the DPW, that would certainly be beneficial. But that, once again, is something that's within the purview of the town administrator and the select board. So that's something I think you can advocate for, Julie, is going forward with the program in terms of how much this is done on a volunteer basis, how much is done controlled, by the town.
Mm-hmm.
Do we add that into the letter?
Sorry.
We add the DPW, asking for DPW help into the letter? Or no?
Well, they have
I wouldn't
already
put in the
agreed
letter.
to help. So, I already have that in there. So we'd be partnering on this program.
Yeah, I think I would just leave that to, Julian being our representative on the select board to, advocate for the proper amount of support from the DPW. Any other questions or comments about this particular program? I think this is a good step in the direction of where we want to go. All right, thanks, Laura.
Thank you.
Okay, shifting gears. Next item is the master plan implementation matrix. A number of people on the committee had been asking, what are we doing about trying to follow up on all the recommendations in the plan? And Laurie has come up with an approach for how to go through all of the different recommendations and start to get status updates on where we stand on all of them. So I'll let Laurie kind of present her idea of what she wants to use as a vehicle to do this.
So I'm going to give credit to Michelle Silly from my office. She's my clerk, and she did a great job preparing this spreadsheet. So what she did is she aggregated the spreadsheet by implementation leader and then by implementation partner. So essentially the spreadsheet on the very top, so you'll see down below are a number of tabs. So when you click on the tab, it gives you the name of the implementation authority. It gives you the number of the goal. It gives you the specific objective. It tells you who all the project implementation leaders are, who the partners are, and then it asks for the implementation status, task completed to date, proposed future tasks, and then the final tab is reasons why the objective was wasn't implemented or no longer applicable. So of course, I went through the objectives that have been assigned to me and the planning board. And I got through about 90% of these. You can see I kind of petered out at the end today. So what I did is the first one, create a downtown planning revitalization committee. And then you can continue on from there. The implementation status is that it is underway. Task completed to date. Well, the master plan implementation committee oversaw the creation of the 2024 downtown revitalization plan report. The future tasks is it's kind of foggy as to what's going to happen from this point forward. So I wrote, clarity is needed as to whether the MPIC will continue to fulfill this role going forward. So that's still a question. Then moving on to the next goal or objective, explore options for creating a fresh and cohesive identity or brand for the new downtown area. I said that that's also underway. I mentioned the downtown revitalization report. Then I mentioned things that are to happen in the near future. So of course, that's the downtown streetscape project. And then I also mentioned, this isn't something that I've spoken to you folks about, but I do plan to apply with the June funding round for technical assistance grant from the Massachusetts Downtown Initiative for participation, well, technical assistance to do a branding and wayfinding program. So that's kind of what we were thinking about. So Michelle has been working with our IT folks to figure out how we can make it so that each of you can fill in. So for example, John Campbell. John Campbell is the representative from the Open Space Committee. So John, you have a couple of recommendations that are assigned to your group. So what this spreadsheet would enable you to do is you would receive a password that would provide you with access to a kind of like master spreadsheet. So then you'd be able to go into the spreadsheet and plug in the answers to these questions. So you could provide the updates on these two tasks. And so everybody who is here, obviously we don't have a police or fire representative here. So in this case, I'd be reaching out to the police chief and the fire chief for help in filling out this task here and what the implementation status is. But a number of you folks represent boards and committees that I'm not necessarily well tuned into what you're doing, like the Historic District Commission. Millie?
Yep.
So let's go to Historic District Commission. You folks have a lot that you're responsible for.
Yep.
And so this program that Michelle created with IT would enable you to go into the spreadsheet yourself and write in the answers.
And we have definitely done quite a bit of those things. So yeah.
So that's awesome. So it would certainly help us out. You know, there are different perspectives on certain recommendations. Like, for example, there are a couple for the Open Space Committee that also appeared on the planning director list. And I put in there, talk to John Campbell to see what the Open Space Committee has been doing, because I
Nice.
don't know the answer.
Uh.
So you filling it out on this sheet will ultimately result in, so then we can compile all of the answers together and have a full picture of what all of these departments and committees and boards have been doing over the last 4 years to implement these recommendations.
This is amazing, actually.
Oh, good, good.
Yeah.
I think what I'd recommend, we just saw this, Lori just sent to this recently. What I'd recommend we do is first structurally, between now and the next meeting, each of us have a chance just to review this particular approach in a little bit more detail and bring it back on the agenda for the next meeting just to talk about, does anybody have any comments about the actual spreadsheet itself and what's going to happen here and the process? Not so much to start to madly work to update all these boxes. I mean, if anybody wants to try and, for their particular one, update some boxes and get a password from Lori, that's fine. But I think the main thing here is this is the first time we've seen this, and I agree. I think it's a great approach, but I think we need to make sure that we don't have any comments or changes to the actual process itself. So I would recommend that, this come up again next time when we've all had a chance to sort of take a more of a detailed look at it and see if we have any questions or comments. John, you had your hand up?
Well, with respect to you, Mr. Chair, I was just wondering why would there be any delay in having Lori get this out to the respective committee chairs, and they could start the process of learning how to log into it and fill in the fields, and at the next meeting you could review how that's going.
Yeah.
I don't know that our committee needs to comment on this, spreadsheet work of art here.
Mm.
I mean, that's a way to, yeah, I agree. I mean, people could just get their assignments and use it and then come back at the next meeting with how they found using it worked, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think what I want to emphasize is this isn't some sort of report card where everybody needs to get 100%. I mean, it's perfectly valid at this point to say, haven't done anything about this yet. I mean, that's a very perfectly valid answer. There's a lot of stuff in here, and all we've been concentrating on so far is the downtown. So, I agree with John. We could just send this out to all the different people, get it
Yeah, I think
started.
it's,
But
it's
don't somehow feel that, if your particular park comes back with a lot of nothing's been happening yet answers on some of these things, that somehow, you're not doing your job. I mean, it's not the intention of this to force all these things to get done in a hurry. It's just to sort of see where we stand on stuff, and then it'll help us decide, what we want to emphasize going forward. So please don't feel in any way, threatened by this, that your particular set of tasks isn't anywhere near complete yet. It wasn't the idea of this to do that. Go ahead, Amy.
Oh, just while everybody's here, and I didn't have time, I didn't look through it all, but when mine opened, it opened up to the Financial Planning Committee. And Lori, if you can open up to that one, I was wondering if that goal was more for open space than financial planning. Because isn't that like, I don't know if the Financial Planning Committee, if we've ever asked for money up from the capital budget for open space, although it'd be great.
We are.
Oh, we're going to?
We are, because actually, there is an acquisition that's going to be on town meeting. So it's to purchase 432 Whitney Street for the sum of $1.7 million. So if you look here at the implementation leaders, you see that there are 3 parties identified. And then if you look under implementation partners, there are another 3 parties. So if you go to the Concom page, you're gonna see the same recommendation.
Oh, okay. That's what I was curious about.
Yeah, so whenever you see, so this recommendation here is gonna appear on the PD planning director. And so it's gonna appear on the pages of all of these parties. And it's also going to appear on the page of all of these parties. So
Okay.
it's going to be repeated. And actually, when I was looking at the planning page, when I was filling in my little blocks, I noticed that there was even repetition in my area. So they had the same recommendation for a couple of different goals. So I'm not sure if that was a Scrivener's error or really that the actual tasks are repeated in a couple of different goals. So that's something to kind of look out for. So if you see repetition on your page, by all means, just delete the repetition. And you may also, like when I was going through my page, I found that I had to adjust the height of the various rows. So while you're inputting your information, chances are you will have to do that as well. So if anybody needs help, if they're not familiar with Excel, then give me a buzz and I'd be happy to talk you through it.
And I think too, if there's confusion as to whose job it is to update a certain thing, it's appearing in multiple places, Lori can act as a central clearinghouse to sort of resolve, who has the primary responsibility. If there's multiple names next to a goal, Lori can sort of help determine who's the person that should at least do the main work to come up with the update kind of thing.
And it is also possible that multiple parties have been trying to skin the cat in different ways. So, like this task, I filled it out with the things that I am aware of. But your individual committees and boards may have been working on the same task and have done additional implementation measures. And so that would be helpful. So then we can compile everything together and get an accurate picture of everything that's been happening.
Any other questions or comments about the general process that Lori's recommending here that we follow to update how we stand on the different recommendations of the master plan? Is everybody agreeable to having Lori, get the passwords out to the people responsible? She can communicate through email to the people who are responsible where she'd like to see updates happen and, explain the process of how you log on and do the updates. And then once again, people can do the best they can to provide some updates between now and the next meeting. I would say, so our next meeting is going to be the third Thursday in April. Lori, from your perspective, we'd probably want to get this, an updated version of this will be when it's usually the Tuesday of the week of the meeting that Michelle sends out the agenda and the minutes and the attachments. So I guess we're saying here that another version of this would be sent back to the committee on the Tuesday, whatever the Tuesday is, the third Tuesday of April, whatever that is kind of thing. So people would need to have, as much as they want to get completed by then. And once again, I think the whole purpose of what happens in the next month is just to get comfortable with this, and also don't hesitate to make recommendations about the actual spreadsheet of the process itself. There are things that people think can be improved or done differently on the process. We can keep modifying the process itself as well as, providing updates. Ultimately, I think one of our major features is one of our major functions is going to be on a monthly basis to continue to review this and decide based on the different departments and goals, what are the things that we want to continue to emphasize back to the town and how are we going to do that? So I see this as being our main reason for existence going forward is the continual update and management of this spreadsheet and recommending back to the town, here are things that our committee thinks are important, and it seems like, not a lot is happening and we think something should be happening and that kind of thing, or we're fairly close to something being completed, how much more has to be done to complete it. So, this will be a tool we can use to manage, which I think is our main function, which is managing the master plan going forward. Any other questions or comments? Once again, I can't see all hands. I can't see if there are any hands up right now or not, but if not, well, thanks to Michelle and the IT department and Lori for getting us this far with this. This is really an excellent vehicle that I think we can use, productively as we continue to sort of accomplish our mission, which is to master plan, to manage the implementation of the master plan going forward. Okay, I'll leave it to you, Lori, to sort of get the word out to the proper people with how to go forward with this between now and the next meeting.
Shall do.
And thank you in advance to everybody who's going to do some work on this. I appreciate that also. Okay, moving down into old new business, down discussion of downtown streetscape improvement. So I was talking to Lori last week about a role that I play at Tower Hill on a committee that awards what's called a Community Greening Award, that recognizes either private businesses or municipalities that are doing good work through horticulture in improving their communities. And at the last committee meeting, we had a couple of really nice nominations for some great street planting work that have been done in Webster and in the town of Kennebunk in Maine, that are going to receive a Community Greening Award for the work they did. And it seemed to me that there could be an opportunity here in Northborough to do some of these same things, especially I know Julianne had mentioned to Lori and I that the Garden Club is putting together plans for how they're going to celebrate the kind of 100th anniversary of the Garden Club and an interest in projects in town. And there could be an opportunity here to leverage some more work over the next year in street planting. And so I sent to Lori to send out to the committee the list of nominees for the Tower Hill Community Greening Award and the ones that I thought were most applicable to our town center with what's going on in Webster and Kennebunk. I don't know, Lori, do you have any that you can display or not? I know everybody had that, especially in the town of Kennebunk. It's really kind of it's kind of spectacular what they did there. A bank in Kennebunk did a phenomenal job of dressing up the front of the bank. And the town was so impressed with what they did. They took that as a model and extended that down the sidewalks in town. It's just kind of a beautiful view of things. And I just thought that we might want to discuss tonight how much of this did we want to do and how we could do this in the center of town. We took a walk. Yeah, if we can sort of move down the pages here till we get to Webster and Kennebunk, especially Kennebunk. Yeah, so in Webster, this was a private business that really sort of redid a garden in front of their space there. They did a lot of work to dig it up and replant it. Did a really nice job with it. And then this is the Kennebunk Savings Bank. This was a pretty spectacular job they did in front of the bank. And like I said, the town played off of that through the bump outs and down the sidewalks and stuff like that. So you walk down this sidewalk, it's really pretty spectacular. So we got talking about the fact we've got the area in front of 4 West Main Street, which the Garden Club has done a nice job planting out so far. But just wondering, either through the Garden Club or the town, if some more annuals could be planted there. And we kind of walk up in a westerly direction. There's a lot of mulched areas that I guess is on CVS owned property. but was wondering if in fact CVS would be willing to allow the town to do some plantings along that area there. There's some talk about planting along the strip by the gas station, by where Church Street comes out onto Main Street. And also there's a little area by where the Richdale Farms is, kind of where South Street comes out onto Main. If in fact, using kind of what's been done in Webster and Kennebunk as a model, if there's a way to, in the short term, you know, as we're coming into the planting season now, encourage some sort of development of, especially planting of annuals, varieties, which really wouldn't need to withstand salt and plowing and snow removal, something that, you know, could be done for this season and then, you know, on a seasonal basis be done again. So I was just kind of inspired by what I saw there. And I guess maybe I'll start with you, Julianne, about, is this something you think the Garden Club might have an interest in? Is the scale of what was done in Kennebunk kind of more than we could expect to be done? Or could we approach something like that, especially if we had the permission to plant in some of the mulched areas around CVS and some of these other areas? You know, could we do something like that to really bring some color and interest into the center of town?
Well, I mean, I think that the garden club is, I don't know that they could do it all. I don't even know if they can do some. I can't speak for them, but I can say that Gary Phillips, who you know, and everybody, a lot of people on this screen know Gary Phillips. He's our I would say resident expert in native plants, and he redid Watson Park. And if you haven't seen it, you should go see it. It's quite something. And he turned that over in a year or two. Pretty amazing. He and I have been talking about those strips by the gas station in 135 in Maine. And those are very difficult situations. As you can see, that weeds don't even grow. But Gary has gotten a list from his native plant people that some of the plants that he can provide to us would thrive there. You know, I think Kennebunk is beautiful, but I would suspect that those strips between the road and the sidewalk have an irrigation system. And, you know, I think where it's absolutely beautiful and it would be something we'd all aspire to. We have to be somewhat realistic about what kind of money we have. And so anyway, Gary and I, and you know, I'm sure that we could get some volunteers to start looking into those strips. The first step, as you all probably know, would be to get a soil sample. And Lori and I have talked, and we have yet to determine. Would you agree, Lori, who owns those areas?
So the area over by the gas station is definitely the Mass DOT right of way. So I saw a site survey, and the site survey showed that it is the Route 20 right of way. So Mass DOT is the owner of that area. The strip over by the gas station, I suspect, because of the location of the curb, that's also Mass DOT right of way. But I haven't been able to find a site survey because the building is so old. So we don't have a file on Richdale Farms. I do plan on checking with Fred Litchfield, who is still around on an occasional basis. So I would not be surprised if he has a copy of the Mass DOT, the Route 20 improvement plans from back in 2010 timeframe. And it is most likely that the survey will show the ownership. So stay tuned on that. I do anticipate that he'll be in early next week. So I will make a point of asking him at that time. So,
Okay, so just a point about that, as soon as possible would be great, because you have to send that off to UMass, and it's been recommended to me that the earlier in the season you do it, the better, because if we wait until full-on planting season, there'll be a delay, and then we won't have that information.
I don't think that the Mass DOT is going to care about the shovel full of dirt. So I suspect that shouldn't be a problem.
Okay. And Rick, you brought up CVS. That's a little bit different area than the strips along the road. I think you could do more annuals in there because it's not exactly on the road. And probably, so we'll get a soil sample there too if CVS allows it. But then we shouldn't forget that Lori has a stash of planters that can also beautify the area, and maybe that's where you put your flashy annuals, and maybe grasses along the more difficult areas or something like that. Maybe we should put our heads together with some of the people from Garden Club and come up with some recommendations. What do you think about that?
That would
Yeah,
make
so
sense.
there are 4 planters that are going to be premiered in May. So those will be going out. They were purchased last year. And so Rick and I discussed it and actually walked the area earlier this week. And he thought that it might be wise, since there are only 4 planters, to aggregate them on the CVS side of the street. So there's more bang, like it looks like a path. So of course, that there are the 4 planters that are up on the bridge on Church Street. So it'd be a continuous run. And then I am hoping to purchase a few more planters at the end of the fiscal year. So I have to wait to see what my budget is looking like at the end of the fiscal year. And if I have any extra money, I'd like to purchase 4 more planters. So next year, those planters would go on the opposite side of the street.
What about on that island as you're coming from Church onto Main?
We talked about that. I would like to put a planter there. I got to talk to Scott. I had previously mentioned that to him, I think last year, and he wasn't too keen on the idea. He thought that Mass DOT would have a problem with it. So I'm going to have a follow-up conversation with him, speak to his contact at Mass DOT, and see if we can get some approval to put a planter on that large island. So in between the large expanse of signs is where I'd like to put it. So it kind of be safe from a truck that might hit the planter.
I agree with you, Julian. I think it'd be a good idea. I think that with the planters on the bridge at Church Street and then a planter on that island and some planters going around the corner in front of CVS, you'd start to get a view of planted out stuff as you came into the center of town, down Church Street or heading out, the other way kind of thing. It would all kind of go together. And then I agree with you. If maybe, Julian, you could send those pictures to the Garden Club and maybe set up a session, with you guys and Lori, and just talk about what might be able to be done, some combination of the planters and some annuals or grasses or whatever, and, get permission from CVS to take a look at, their soil there, and could something be planted around that corner there? I think it'd be really nice. And then if we could, even if I'm not sure what the plans are going to be for the garden beds on either side of the lion fountain. I know there's some perennials coming up in there, looks like there's some iris or some daffodils coming up now. But if some annuals, a few colorful annuals could be interspersed on those 2 beds on either side of the front of the lion fountain there, that could add a little bit of color, and continue to sort of keep Kennebunk in mind as something aspirational, that if we could get to that someday. But I think anything like this we can do would start to show we're paying attention to the downtown. Amy?
Yeah, I was wondering, and I could do it if you wanted to write another ARPA request just for the 4 planters right now. The 4 new planters, and plus we need a little planting budget because we have to fill the planters with plants. And I don't think it will be a big ask. I think Lori has the prices for the 4 planters, and then how much it will cost to fill them. We fill them in the spring and the fall. But we might need a little money for the plants that go in the planters.
I'm all for that. I don't know if Pat Bigelow would be willing to, I don't know if we've ever worked with her to ask her to donate a little plant material if it wasn't a whole lot.
I don't think so. Well, I mean, I haven't, but I know we asked around town before and we haven't gotten any. We could get them at a discount, but
So we get them at cost from a wholesaler. So Amy and I have gone out the last 2 years and we select the plantings on the day of, and then we plant either the next day or some day that week. So or the same day. So the more planters we have, then obviously it's a bigger job. And the soil has to be amended every year. So it's a special soil, which is also pricey.
so I think we're gonna need a little money for the soil and the plants. But I don't know if that's in front of this committee or we could just do it.
Yeah, I have been saving up the money for this year for the 8 pots. So I definitely have enough money for the eight planters.
Lori, do you have enough for spring, summer, and fall?
Right now, I was planning on, I don't know, it's really hard for me to say because I'm still getting bills in. So there's still a few months left to the fiscal year. So I don't like to commit until I see what my budget is going to be like at the end of the fiscal year.
Just because we're gonna do the 4 planters on the CVS side, would it be a large ask to ask for 4 more planters for the other side this year? Just do it all at once and the plants, and then that will really pop. The planters were what, like $600 or $800
Yeah, I paid about $2,300 for those,
for the 4?
for the 4.
So we could ask for like $5,000, $2,500 for the planters.
This would be ARPA money you're talking about?
Yep.
I don't know, Julianne, does that sound reasonable?
Rick, you're always asking.
Well, I think you're
Personal feeling. Ask for
I could give it a shot.
anything big,
I'm
but
just-
yeah, I think definitely, because even if it's just ARPA money this year and maybe even next year, I mean, how many times have people said, oh, those planters on Church Street look so nice?
Yep.
You'll stimulate interest and then people won't mind if we build it into the budget, but I think it's a great idea. And if Amy will just write the email.
Just don't go all out and look at the planters tomorrow. They're not filled yet. We even left the grasses in there, hoping they'll come back this year to save a little money.
All right,
And
I
then
think-
what I could do for next year is incorporate it into my budget as a regular item. So if we have 12 planters, that's definitely an expense. So I'd probably include another line item in my budget of a couple of grand per year to cover the cost of soil, fertilizer, and plants.
I have a question.
Go ahead,
Lori, did you guys consider how Westboro does like a business by the whatever it's called? I can't think right now. I'm so tired. But they spend like $400 or $500 and a business kind of sponsors it, and they buy and put a little advertising, little thing in the planter.
You know,
I think we talked about this
in
before.
my prior town, what we did, so the Adopt a Pot program, we started out doing it that way, and we had businesses actually watering the pots. But a lot of them didn't do a good job, and the plants ended up dying pretty early on. So we abandoned that approach. And what we ended up doing is we financed the pots and other landscaping improvements through an Adopt a Banner program. So we would sell the banners. We would do 2 banners a year. We would do a Christmas banner, and we would do all year banner. And the banners would be sponsored by specific businesses, so their business name would appear on the banner itself. And then the banner, the all year banner, or most of the year banner, would be up for 2 years, and then the Christmas banner would be up for 3 seasons. And then we would, after the 2 years or the 3 years, we would buy a new one. So we would stagger it. So 1 year we'd do a Christmas banner, the next year we do an all year banner, then there'd be a year off, then we do another Christmas banner, then we do an all year banner. And it was very, very lucrative. So when we first started out, I think we sold maybe 25 banners. And by the time I left, we were selling on average 40 to 45 banners. So we were recouping about $9,000 every time we did a banner program. And then we would pay the fire department, an individual from the fire department, to put up and take down the banners. So that's another option. The businesses loved it because, of course, it was taxable marketing for them. So they could deduct it off of their taxes. And then they could, get the pride of saying, hey, I'm helping with downtown revitalization. I'm helping to make our downtown attractive. So I think that would be a really good program for Northborough. Of course, I understand there's already banners. There's the Memorial Day banners that go up every year. And so they already own the banner hardware. And so I'm not sure if they would allow us to use their banner hardware. So that's a question. I don't know if anybody is affiliated with that group that owns the banner hardware. I think it's the Apple Fest Committee. Am I right?
Yeah, I know Michelle Gillespie has a lot to do with that. And, I think I could get a hold of Michelle Gillespie and sort of feel her out as to, where she stands on this, and would she work with Lori to, work cooperatively on how we could use that hardware for the benefit of both the Apple Fest Committee and the town.
That would be great, because the good thing about the banners is it adds color and art and kind of pizzazz. So you're making the downtown more attractive with the banners while you are also earning money for other improvements. So kind of a win-win.
I saw some in Franklin the other day, and it said, meet me downtown in Franklin, like a cute little thing. So it was sort of like, oh, let's go for coffee. And these cute little banners. So.
Yeah, that's cute.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'll call Michelle and see what she thinks about that. And if she's agreeable to that, then I'll put Lori in touch with Michelle, and they can work out, how that might go. All right, so it sounds like we've got a number of things we can be working on here. I think certainly anything we can start to do here with the planters and some additional planting along Main Street, I think will start to help to, make that particular part of town more attractive, and once again start to show that actions are being taken to improve, the look of downtown, short of any major, revitalization or redevelopment. But it's a good first step, and then, the Adopt a Street Tree program is also a step in the right direction. So, any other discussion about streetscape improvements at this point? Okay, next thing on the agenda is to talk about moving to hybrid meetings. You're probably aware that the town is installing the proper technology in the select board meeting room and in conference room B to allow hybrid meetings to take place. So I think we need to discuss as our committee, where do we stand on that? My feeling is that I think if we can start to get together face to face in a room, we can be more productive. And although there are some benefits to the technology as far as people not having to come into the center of town, there's also, as we've seen in each meeting, people fading in and out on their technology, and it's not as easy to use as being face to face kind of thing. Obviously, with the hybrid technology, if someone on the committee was not available to be in town but wanted to participate, they could participate remotely. Although I think that if we wanted to do this, I think we'd have to each commit that if we were in town for that day, we would show up and meet in person. And obviously, members of the community could come in and watch our meetings, and they could also watch us remotely also. So it's kind of like sort of the best of both worlds. So I guess I'll just open the floor up for comment and discussion around, do we want to, when the technology is available, go to this hybrid meeting approach and start to have at least our committee members start to meet in person in town hall. So who'd like to speak to that? Floor is open.
I'm fine with that. I feel like meeting in person does accomplish, in some ways, a lot more conversation and, throwing about of ideas.
Yeah. Once again, I can't see everybody's face here, whether there are any hands or anything. Who else would like to comment?
We do 6 to 8 because like now it's 9:30 and we'd still be at town hall. Or is that too early for people? If we're going in person. And if someone can't make it, they can still go remotely, right?
Oh,
If
yes.
someone's traveling or
Yeah.
Right. But I think that would be the reason to not be here in person. If we decide to do this, if you are available to show up in person, you just shouldn't stay at home because you'd rather work from your living room. I think we would commit that we would, unless we were out of town, that we would come to this, and we can talk about whether we want to start at 6 or 7. I think we've done a good job tonight. We had a big agenda, but I think for the most part, I think we've done a good job of completing 2 hours on a regular basis. Other comments?
I also
And you
think it's
can-
hard for Lori because she lives further away, and it's kind of hard to ask her to be at town hall every night till 9 o'clock
That's a consideration.
with a family at home.
Yeah. Well, it's conceivable Lori could join us remotely. but I
Lori
suppose
can go home.
That would sort of defeat part of the purpose.
Oh, that'd be cool if you're all in a room and I'm at home.
Right.
I'm not sure that would send the message we want to send. John, you had your hand up?
Yeah, Rick, I was just going to say that I foresee your calling the meetings and you have very low attendance in person. And many say, hey, I couldn't make it in person, but they log in. So we might consider trying a trial basis or the occasional meeting once a quarter or something as in person, or when we have some agenda items that might work really well in person, and doing it on that kind of basis. And you're starting to get closer to the summer months where it's going to be even more difficult. So that this might possibly work better toward the fall to get started. But I like in-person meetings. I think they're much more effective at many times. But so many other people on this committee are on other committees too, and with respect to Lori's time as well, it's going to be hard to call us all in person all the time.
Yeah.
It's funny how we did it for decades before COVID.
I know.
I thought the hybrid was meant to help, as you said, it's the best of both worlds when it comes to participation and involvement of the residents, right? Some people are not technologically savvy, some people are not physically mobile. So hybrid allows the residents to participate and or view our meetings much more conveniently, and there's more availability. As people who are volunteering, we should be able to, I mean, I guess I would go, as John said, maybe having at least, quarterly or every other meeting, if that's something that we can do. But I think we should meet in person. And if we're having presentations, the presenters don't have to be, Lori doesn't have to be, but we should be able to sit in a room for a couple of hours. I don't think going to 6 o'clock is fair to full-time working people who also volunteer at night. And I think that's why it's always been 7 o'clock. But the hybrid was meant to help the residents participate and be aware of what's going on, not necessarily allow me to sit here under a blanket in my room. So, but it's, I don't think it's too much of an ask if we could do it at least on a quarterly basis, or that we meet in person.
Other comments?
Or
Lori,
as
go
John
ahead, Julia.
mentioned, that if there's an agenda that, Rick, you feel you would like most people to attend in person, then the quarterly and anything that might be better decided if we're in person.
Yeah. Lori, are you sensing anything from the town or the state that at some point there's going to be a requirement that people start meeting in person again?
From what I've been hearing, I think that the hybrid option is going to be permanent. So that's what that's what I've been hearing. So they will allow people to continue to meet remotely, but the decision hasn't been made. I think there's still another year under the current way of doing things before it expires.
We don't know whether the direction or the authority will be that it can be a remote, it can be hybrid, but who can be hybrid and who has to be in person? Like when there's public hearings and the public can participate, I think that the full boards, committees, and commissions should be in person to meet with the residents who can physically make it to the meetings, but have that opportunity for the hybrid or the well, YouTube is only going to allow you to watch. Is the hybrid going to allow participation from the audience? I would assume so.
Other comments, Lori? Do you have your hand up, Lori? Or you just,
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm just playing with my hair.
well, from your perspective, Lori, I mean, you're very important to this committee. You're doing a really good job for us, and you bring a lot of good opinions and input kind of thing. So if we decide to start meeting either on a semi-regular basis, on a regular basis, in person, is that a real imposition on your schedule with everything else you're doing?
I've been spoiled the last couple of years, so I'm not gonna lie, it's gonna be hard to go back to all of the in-person meetings because there are so many committees.
Yeah.
So I really, really like the idea of the quarterly. I definitely see the benefit of meeting in person, at least occasionally. But yeah, I mean, it's certainly your choice, and I will do whatever you folks want to do. If you want to meet in person every month, then we'll meet in person every month. That's fine. But if you're asking for my preference, I would say the quarterly in-person meetings are my preference.
Mm,
Yeah.
that's understandable for you.
Other comments? Go ahead, Julia.
A little bit of this is going to be a learning curve, right? I mean, if we're able to meet in person, most of us, Lori's able to stay at home and it works well, then you know, we do the in-person more often, but I think a lot of it is going to depend on how the first few hybrid meetings work. And, even how the audience participates with us and how many people come,
Yeah.
to hear our meeting. So a little bit of it is a trial.
I agree. I think our particular committee particularly wouldn't have a lot of public attendance as much as a planning board or conservation commission or the select board would have, kind of thing. From time to time, some people might show up, or, we got good attendance when we did the master plan session for the consultants, and we did the downtown study with the consultants. And we wanted public input. We had good response to that, but I'm not aware of any of our committee meetings we've had remotely that we've had anybody that I'm aware of, in the audience watching us, but I'm not exactly sure of that.
Rick, if
Go ahead, John.
there was if it was publicized that the master plan committee is meeting in person and there's an agenda item, I mean, for instance, if we were inviting the public to talk about some of these streetscape things, there'd be a lot of input and a lot of interest, and you could see people coming in and really augmenting what the committee's trying to do. The review of the master plan report, is kind of a big thing. But as we bite off small pieces of that, and the Lake Street project, so I think you'd get some community interest, which can only help the committee.
Yeah. The person from IT who's responsible for installing this hybrid technology has offered to do a training session for committee chairs that are interested in considering it. So I told Lori I'd be interested in going to the training session, where I think is coming up between now and our next meeting. So why don't we just leave it that I'll go to the training session and see what this is all about, and sort of develop an opinion as to how straightforward would this be in the first place to even do, or how good is the technology, or is there other things going to happen to it to make it more effective going forward? So why don't we say that I'll attend the training session whenever that is and report back at the next meeting, give you my impression about whether it's really smooth or kind of clunky or exactly how it would work. And then we can make a further determination as to, do we want to do this? And if we do want to do it, how frequently do we do it? So let's, if that's agreeable to the committee, let me at least get a demonstration of how it all works. And then we can decide from there. Any other comments about this particular topic? Okay, so that brings us to a review of the minutes. We have two sets of minutes to review tonight, the minutes from December 18th and minutes of February 15th. So the December 18th minutes, there was discussion, Amy had raised some concerns about how things were presented about the Blake Street project and the cost for that. Since that time, there's been some additional modifications to the minutes. Lori came up with a different wording for that, which was sent to us either yesterday or today. So I guess the first question would be, Amy, based on the most recent change that Lori made to the December minutes around this particular topic, do you have any other suggestions? Are you okay with the latest wording that Lori has suggested?
Wait, what date are these minutes?
So these would be the
December 18th?
December 21st minutes, and there was a Lori had sent an update to that. Was it today, Lori, or yesterday?
I think it might have been.
No,
I
got them.
sent my suggested language just to you, Rick, Julianne, and Amy, and then Amy sent back her comments, which I think I forwarded to everybody. So she still wants to go forward with the language that specifies the $100,000, and I'm still concerned about doing that. Of course, it's totally up to you. But the wording makes it sound like I thought the cost of the phase one project was going to be $100,000, which I never thought that the cost of the phase one project was going to be that little. So if you folks decide that you want to go forward with that language, in tonight's meeting minutes, I would like a correction. So I think what happened is Amy asked a question. I may have misinterpreted her question, and I responded for what I thought the cost would be to do Blake Street only. So that wouldn't include the Pocket Park. That wouldn't include the municipal parking lot. That wouldn't include Blake Street. It would just be, the sidewalk improvements for Blake Street only. So I guess in tonight's minutes, if you folks, want to go forward with Amy's language in the 21st, December 21st meeting minutes, I just want tonight's minutes to reflect the clarification that I believed the phase one project would be $200,000 to $250,000.
I'm fine with that too. The only thing is, in February, you kind of clarified it too. Because we discussed it and you said, oh, I must have misunderstood you. I never meant it was 100,000. I meant it was 250. So that's why I thought leaving it at 100, because I went back and watched the minutes and that's what we talked about. So I didn't want to change it to 250 because it's not what was said. But then when we go to February, I asked, now it's 250, and I thought it was 100, and then you explained that you never meant it to be 100, you meant it to be 250. So if you look at February fast, but you can clarify it again tonight, but it might seem funny if we clarify it in February and then clarify it in March again.
I have no problem with confirming it in tonight's minutes, have them reflect that fact that we're confirming what she corrected in February was what she meant to say in December.
And that's fine too. I'm fine with that.
So what we're saying is that the December 21st minutes would reflect that Lori had said that the phase one was $100,000, and then were further clarifications, which, as Amy said, came up in the February minutes and be reiterated in tonight's minutes also. So what we're voting on is to approve the December minutes as submitted with the modification that the cost of the phase one downtown revitalization project was stated by Lori to be $100,000.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, we need to vote on each of these individually. Julianne?
Aye.
Amy?
Aye.
Millie?
Aye.
Ashley? You still
Gotta
with us?
leave.
Okay. Did Tracy ever join? Tracy?
Yes, hi.
Aye. You said aye. Okay.
Hi,
Frank?
yes.
Fran?
Aye.
Gene Kennedy?
Aye.
Gene Cahill?
Aye.
Rick Leaf votes aye. John Campbell?
Aye.
And Jen Tolman.
Aye.
Okay, so the December 21st minutes are approved as amended. Next, we have the minutes from the February 15th, 2024 minutes. Amy.
Rick, I believe, excuse me, I'm sorry, mine says it's December 18th minutes, not
I'm sorry,
December
you're right.
21st.
Right.
Okay.
I
Sorry,
think there
December
was a
18th.
typo on the agenda. It should be December 21st.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay,
Yeah.
I was right.
sorry.
Every once in a while, I'm right about something. Amazing. Okay. So now we move on to the February 15th minutes. Amy had recommended a couple of changes in the February 15th minutes. I'll also mention once again that in the first paragraph, the minutes indicate that we would take public comment, but in fact, we stated that we were not taking public comment. So that needs to be changed again. And maybe, Laura, if you can just let Michelle know that wording's being carried forward from minutes to minutes. It's
Yep.
that did not allow public comment is what we've been doing.
Oh, yeah.
So basically, those would be right now, are there any other
Mhm.
changes besides the ones that Amy suggested and changing did allow public comment, it did not?
Mr. Chairman, I move we accept the minutes of February 15th as amended.
Is there a second for that?
Second,
Okay, once again, going through the roll, Julianne,
Aye.
Amy,
Aye.
Millie,
Aye.
Tracy,
Aye.
Fran,
aye,
Jean Kennedy,
Aye.
Jean Cahill,
Aye.
I vote aye, John
Aye.
and Jen.
Aye.
Okay, covered a lot tonight. Is there any other business to come before the committee tonight?
I know it's late, but Millie, we should mention that Historic District Commission is thinking about a small area as an historic district. And as we move forward and think about, downtown revitalization, we'll have to keep working with Historic District and that will be another, I think, a big plus. So
Mm-hmm.
Millie, did you just want to mention the buildings that they're thinking about?
The Gale building,
The church, the
oh,
two
that specifically, yeah.
Yeah. the
Um,
church, the two Gale buildings, C'est La Vie, the library, and there's one other.
That it was the other ball property, Stephen Ball on the other side of the library.
That brick financial planning building, whatever that is there.
Yeah, that is financial planning. Yeah, but the small brick one. Yeah,
That's right. That's
that
right.
one. Be kind of nice to see if we could work something out with the MPIC planning process.
And then any improvements there could go to John Campbell's committee and ask for money for historic preservation.
Aha.
So get ready.
All right, Millie, if things move forward on that and there's actually action taken to create that historic district, just keep our committee up to date. You can let Lori, I know you want an agenda item on this meeting to update the committee on what's going on with that.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Okay, hearing no other business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second for that?
Second.
Second.
Julianne,
Aye.
Amy,
Aye.
Millie,
Aye.
Tracy,
Aye.
Fran,
aye.
Jean Kennedy,
Aye.
Jean Cahill,
Aye.
Rick Leaf votes aye, John
Aye.
and Jen.
Aye.
All right, thanks again. We had to cover a lot of ground tonight, and the next meeting will be on April 18th. See you then.
Night all.